This episode is Lur Shlema Zvi Shmuel ben Sarah.
He was ma'amin ve'no ma'amin. He believed and he also didn't believe so much.
Welcome to Prism of Torah with Rabbi Saf Aaron Prisman, engaging Divrei Torah, packed with stories and practical insights. Find us wherever you get your podcasts or at prismoftorah.org.
Shalom Uvracha. In this week's Parsha, Parshas Noach, I want to share with you something that's been bothering me for several years now. And Baruch Hashem, I found a very interesting pshat that I think we can learn a lot from, brought down by Rabbi Shimshon Pincus. And it answers all the questions I had. Question number one. We know the Parsha starts off with Ela toldos Noach, Noach ish tzadik tamim haya b'doirisav. That Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. We know there's a famous machloikis argument. What does it mean when it says he was a tzaddik, he was a righteous person, but in his generation? Does it mean that he was a tzaddik in his generation, but in Avram's generation, he wouldn't have been considered such a big tzaddik? Or, despite the fact that his environment was very bad, he still managed to be a tzaddik. Wow, that's unbelievable. But it doesn't matter which way you go, a tzaddik he is, as the pasuk tells us. Noach was a tzaddik, not stam a tzaddik tamim, perfect tzaddik. And if that is true, how can it be that the same Rashi brings down another midrash later on and says that Noach was actually forced to go into the teva, the ark, that he built for 120 years to give a chance to everyone around him to ask what's going on. And by that he'll tell them, because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu was upset with the way we're acting, and you have to do tshuva, etc. So he believed there was going to be a mabul, there's going to be this flood, and yet, because the pasuk says that because of the water that came down, Noach was forced into the teva, that's the only reason he went into the teva, meaning he didn't have such belief in Hashem, as the Rashi says, Mipnei mei hamabul, af Noach miktanei amanah haya. He wasn't of 100% belief. He was ma'amin ve'no ma'amin. He believed and he also didn't believe so much. Velo nichnas lateiva, and he didn't enter the ark ad shedachku hamayim. Only once the waters really pushed him to go in. So I don't understand. If he's a tzaddik, how can you say he was miktanei emunah? That's going the other extreme. Ktanei emunah means he was one of those with little faith. That's the literal translation. How can that be? And what do you mean? He believes or he doesn't believe? What does it mean, ma'amin velo ma'amin? To make it even more extreme, we know the Chazal quotes a Navi that says that Mei Mabul was referred to Mei Noach, as if Noach was involved and was, to a certain extent, to blame for the fact the flood occurred. How can we reconcile all these questions? Says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus an unbelievable idea. And he says the mistake that Noach had on his level was the anhaga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning the belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, midas hadin. I will translate that. He so believed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was full of mercy and rachamim, that he said, everything's going to be okay. I don't believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do such a bad thing, even though they deserve it. There's no way. Hashem is rachum v'chanun. He's so merciful. For sure, it's going to be okay. And because of that, he wasn't able to bring himself to daven enough for the people. Because had it been that he really believed that they should have 100% fear, because yes, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu said the mabul's coming, he's going to bring in the flood because they deserve it, he should have torn his clothes, screamed to Hashem, and everyone will see him doing that. Perhaps that'll affect them also. And by that, it will bring to a total turnaround. Where did we see this in history? We saw this by the Jewish people with Mordechai. Eliyahu Hanavi told him, listen, there's a gzer now, the chas v'shalom, Klal Yisrael is going to be totally chas v'shalom taken out. And he said, what? How can this be? This is horrible. He put sak va'efer and he started screaming to Hashem, did tshuva together with everyone, and be'emet at the last second, everything was switched around. V'na'afochu, as we know. The rest is history. Even by Nineveh, we saw the same thing with the Goyim. When Yoina Hanavi came and told them that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to get rid of all of them, they did tshuva. In short, the idea over here, ma'amin velo ma'amin, he believed in Hashem, but he believed Hashem is all good to such an extreme that instead of HaKadosh Baruch Hu representing emes, he's representing only good, only doing chesed. Of course, din is also good, but he only believed that Hashem will do good, and he thought, no, I believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of us, and everything's going to be okay. And that, according to Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, was the mistake. That is what Chazal is telling us. He believed and didn't believe. He believed in Midas HaChesed, but he didn't believe enough in Yiras Hashem, in the Yira of the Din, because that is a bit above. That already you need belief. Belief is something you don't know for a fact. You can't comprehend in your mind. HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised that the Klal Yisrael will stay forever. So how can it be he's going to get rid of us? That's not your job. Your job is to know there's Midas Hadin, that is also part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Midas Rachamim. And when people do bad, they deserve a punishment. Yes, we have a special wild card called tshuva, and we should use it. But a person should let the fear affect him, and by that, use the weapons HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, our spiritual weapons, which is to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to say Tehillim, to do chesed, to change ourselves. And by that, we remove the Midas Hadin hovering over us, like we saw in the days of Mordechai and Esther. This is very fitting with the Rambam. The Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs, after he brings the mitzvah of emunah, believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the mitzvah of Avas Hashem, loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he brings the mitzvah of Yira, and he says, and the fourth mitzvah is, Shetzivanu la'amin irato itale ulipached mimenu. We have to believe that we should fear Hashem and be scared of Him, because that is the trigger to make changes, and we can't just say it's going to be okay and be on autopilot. With that, we actually can answer all the questions we raised. How can it be that even though he was a tzaddik, and it was obvious he was a tzaddik, because the pasuk says that, it's not stam a tzaddik, it's tzaddik tamim, a perfect tzaddik, so how could it be that Rashi is bringing a midrash that calls him miktanei amana, that he didn't have such a high level of emunah in Hashem? How can that be? So we're answering, yes, he had emunah in Hashem, of course, but he so believed in Hashem that he more believed in Midas HaChesed. He didn't believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu will actually do anything that has to do with din. And therefore, from a certain perspective, he wasn't mamin enough, because he wasn't mamin in the Midas Hadin. Now we understand why the water pushed him in, because although he was working for 120 years to build the ark as Hashem commanded him, but he said, yeah, it's just giving them a chance to lachzor b'tshuva, but for sure HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't at the end do Midas Hadin and get rid of everyone of the generation. Can't be. And only when he saw, whoa, the water's really getting strong over here, then he realized, whoa, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this time it will happen. And he had to get in because he had no choice. And that's why it's called Mei Noach, because especially a tzaddik like Noach, but every one of us has such a koach of tefillah to affect the situation that we have to let the fear affect us, to act as a catalyst and a trigger to change ourselves, to scream out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to make changes, to daven, to do Tehillim, to do whatever it takes to change the decree. And that he didn't do. And by being passive to a certain extent, that's why it's called Mei Noach. Yiratzon, that will take this idea and realize how much each one of us can make a change. And hence, yes, fear is not necessarily a negative thing. Fear is also a chesed Hashem is doing with us. We have to let the fear affect us and leverage off of fear to do good things, to change, to not go under the red line of doing bad things. I'd like to end with an unbelievable true story that the Shelah HaKadosh brings down. I actually saw it in my machzor for Yom Kippur about the importance of saying Tehillim, and this is what we're saying, that a person can do things and make changes, even though there's Midas Hadin hovering over us. And he says there was a maaseh that the Shelah brings down, and he said this was in the year Kuf Yud Beis, 112, so I'm assuming it was 5,112, which was a couple of years after all the Gzeras against the Jews, in a village near to the place Arpot. which was one of the few places that the enemies of the Jews weren't in charge there. And there was this old person that wasn't so known, very simple Yid, and all he did was say Tehillim all the time. As he became older, he suddenly passed away in old age. And within 30 days from his ptira, from passing away, he came to one of the Talmidei Chachamim over there in a dream. And he saw him. And he saw him that he's standing with the little book in his hand. And he says, wait a second. Aren't you the person that we buried 20-something days ago? He said, yes, I am him. So he said, and what's this book in your hand? He says, this is the Sefer Tehillim. And I came to warn you that you should warn all the village over here where I used to live in, because it wasn't the same place where this Talmid Chacham was living. They should run away from there because this city is very in huge danger. They should run for their lives because until now, Midas Adin wasn't hovering over them because I completed Tehillim every week. No one knew that, but I completed Tehillim every week. And Kol Od I was alive and I did that. B'schut that, and the merit of that, they were saved. But now there's no one that will save the village. And when this Talmid Chacham, this Chassid, woke up in the morning, he sent a shaliach, a messenger, to tell the city, please run for your life. It's very dangerous. I really feel something's going to happen. And he told them the story. Some feared and ran away. And some stayed there. And unfortunately, they were all murdered. And Midas Adin was there. And the Shelah says that from that day, he himself took upon himself to say Tehillim every week to finish Tehillim. It's divided into 7. And he said the importance of saying Tehillim. I'm just bringing the story to show you how, with our own mouth, with our own deeds and machshava, we can change from Midas Adin and Midas Ha'achamim, and hence it's important that we let the fear factor affect us in the positive sense. Have a good Shabbos.
This concludes another episode of the Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Eli Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on the Prism of Torah.